Hello again, everyone. Welcome to our special series, Demystifying Mental Wellness Within the Workplace. My friend Susanna Harkinen and myself, as a registered counselor, we decided to come together to talk about the issue of mental wellness, but not in a way that is intimidating or overwhelming us these days. And of course, we know that with everything that has been happening in the world over the past year, a lot of this has been surfacing and resurfacing for us. And again, we are being bombarded with, this is what you should do. And it's kind of the all heal solutions that sometimes we just can't relate to. And thus we wanted to bring to our attention, to our awareness, what are mental health issues or symptoms that we could be going through and not realizing this is something that actually just goes beyond, you should feel good about yourself. And where do we seek therapy, as in mental health professionals certified to support us? As we were talking before in previous episodes, we said what we're feeling now, we could be supported in the now and in the future with a certain set of professionals. But more importantly, we need to go back and go to root causes. And the root causes is what we're talking about. And this is how mental health professionals could support us. So, Susanna, the first thing usually when we're not feeling well on some level, on some mental health level, we turn to our close circle. And our close circle are friends and family. Now, this versus seeking therapy. Conditions. When do we know that this is something we could be supported with within our circle? And when do we know that we really need to seek therapy?
Yeah, that's a really brilliant question. Because we are being taught that our friends and family are the key people and the most important people. If you know, it's one of those things that seek proximity and seek friends and family. But sometimes friends and family, or oftentimes friends and family, are not very neutral about our situation. They have an opinion about it. They might be biased. They might be involved in the situation itself. They might be the cause of the situation itself.
Yes.
very often it are, because we are not separate from our family and our upbringing and our childhood and all those issues, all those things. So they have had an impact on us.
Yes.
And sometimes we don't see forest from the trees when we talk to our families, for example. Let me make a difference between families and friends, because there's a distinction. When it comes to our family, families do have their own dynamic.
Yes.
And within that dynamic, it can be a healthy one or an unhealthy one.
Mm-hmm.
Quite often, it's not the healthiest one.
Yes. In between, let's give it that.
let's give it somewhere in between. And that's also part of growth. Mm-hmm. But then we may have issues that actually stem from the family and our earlier experiences. And talking to people who actually were the causes of some of the damage might not be helpful unless these people have also done a lot of work on themselves.
Okay.
What I'm seeing quite often are, this is saying that people in therapy are in therapy because of the people who should have gotten therapy didn't get therapy.
Yes.
So in essence, if our parents, grandparents had mental health challenges or real issues that they didn't deal with, they would have passed those on to us, or we would have been impacted by them.
I actually just want to bring up a point here, and that's very important to what you said. When we do go to therapy, we are not trying to heal others. We're actually healing ourselves. So we're not going to therapy to heal our parents and how they should have done it, or how they should do it now. We are there to uncover our own blocks and our own traumas and heal through them, recognizing that our family members could never see from our worldview lens. They can never see from our perspective. They would never share it in that perspective, but understanding that it's not your responsibility to change them.
Yes, yes. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's really, really important. Mm-hmm. The only person that we can really influence is ourselves.
That's true.
And we are often very eager. We may take a course, or we may, do something for ourselves, and we see what others should be doing. If only they would do this, whether it's healthier eating or some mental health thing or an activity that we have. But we cannot force things on people.
No. And we're not supposed to assume responsibility for them.
No, we're not. And families are systems. And when one part of the system changes, the whole system is impacted.
That's true.
So you may impact the family, but that should not be, that is not your primary goal. The primary goal is to make yourself, feel better and be able to take that distance perhaps with issues. It's also, we're not putting blame on anybody here. It's really, really important. You don't go to therapy to put blame on your parents.
Yeah, that won't work.
It won't work. They did the best they could.
Yeah.
But it is helpful to get professional help when you have issues that keep on repeating themselves, for example, with the family.
Sure.
Whether what about friends? You fight always about money, or there are certain taboos that you can't address that have been actually very traumatic, whether it's, it could be any kind of very traumatic events. And everybody's just pretending that they don't exist. Those kinds of things, it's helpful to get outside help. That's families. And then with friends. Depends on the quality of your friends and their level of awareness. It's important to surround yourself by good people. So having a lot of friends and knowing a lot of people is not a guarantee that you will have quality.
Yes.
Quality friends. We both know that.
We do. We've been actively, consciously creating a tribe of supporting friends in our life. And we're seeking them literally now globally. It doesn't have to be within the close proximity.
But a good friend is somebody who can challenge you. And a good friend is somebody who doesn't always take your side and say, yes to everything that you propose, to say, oh, that horrible person. Putting blame on the outside forces or people can be helpful when you want to vent.
Yes.
That horrible person who left me, or that friend was, that person.
Your ex-boyfriend. And
we all have been there sometimes.
Better than that.
Sure. But it's important to take that responsibility back to you. You always have a choice, really. We did talk about this in an earlier episode. You always have a choice. And we are not victims of our lives. There are situations and people that have hurt us.
Yes.
And we don't have to accept what they did. But we can forgive and move on. And there's a big difference between acceptance and forgiveness.
I think
we'll then we can talk about it in another episode. But here, if you have friends that are able to support your growth and challenge you, by all means, friends can be more meaningful than any therapy. But sometimes friends are biased as well, or they may have same issues as you do, or there might be other reasons why they are not in a position to help you. And often, people don't have just the skills. The therapist is trained to be a neutral observer, to read between the lines, to be there unconditionally. And people who are closest to us sometimes just can't do that.
So that is from the self-help, as in proximity. Now, the other elements that have been coming up, again, as we were talking about some of the ways that mental health would, when it's unwell, we have anxiety, the depression, everything. And then we keep getting the advice of, okay, and you said it earlier, exercise, eat well, get some fresh air, yoga, meditation.
Do some fun
stuff. Therapy, again. I mean, again, is it masking symptoms versus going to root causes?
All these things are good in themselves. Yes. I mean, maybe I should, maybe you should answer this question because you're the expert in holistic coaching. But this is exactly, exercise is helpful. Eating healthy is helpful.
Yes.
All of those advice that we're getting, they're not bad advice.
But that's the point for me. This is actually, that point is what got me into discovering the health coaching aspect. And health coaching is about, it's different than life coaching is different than that. Health coaching is about looking at your life as a whole and looking at the different elements that contribute as inputs into your body and into your wellness and happiness. So these are the bottom line of it. What got me there was I just walked out of the last 2 businesses that I co-founded. I was going through my doctoral journey. I'm like, okay, just need 6 months of focus and I'm done with my thesis and I'm done. Well, it took 1.5 years. And during that time, I start saying, okay, for the first time in my life, let me prioritize my health. I discovered CrossFit, kickboxing. So it was like really intense workouts. I started eating well, measuring my foods as in, the weight and the macronutrients and all of this. And I lost a bit of weight and layers of fat within the first 6 months. But then the year after, I gained 20 kilos. Mm-hmm. And I was completely stressed out and I did not feel well. And that for me was like the bomb of questions, like the $1 million question. I followed what every book says. You eat well, you exercise, you should be well. And what happened? And that for me was the element of understanding that I could not just mask whatever was going on in my life with exercising and eating well. Because again, I actually over-exercised that I started hurting myself. I started getting injured. At a point, I injured my shoulder so badly that I would still go to the exercise with literally just putting my arm there just for a replacement of a sling. And I'd still work throughout. And everyone's looking at me, it's like, is she crazy? I'm like, but I'm on a momentum. If I stop now, I'm not going to be well. But of course, I was not well. I was just not well. And it was taking that holistic approach, understanding that everything going on in my head, my mental health was not well because I was going through my doctoral degree. I did not know when I'm going to finish it. I was running out of money. And then beyond that, how am I going to kind of being able to afford it? What am I going to do with it after it? And all these things impacted my body. I was in anxiety all the time. I was stressed out.
And high alert.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was only through coaching and mental health professionals that I was able to understand that I was trying to mask the symptoms. I was trying to deal with the superficial layers. I actually had a lot more going underneath there. And it was related to my self-worth and my upbringing and my nurture and my environment and all these elements that contributed to my well-being, my wellness as a whole, as a person.
Exactly.
Have I got 100% hang of it? Of course not. But understanding
now, never do.
Exactly. Understanding my triggers, understanding that it is a lot of small elements that contribute to my wellness. And it is the compounding effect of all these blocks together that make me feel better.
Yeah. And I think it is important, though, to say that exercise, for example, is the number one healing element for any type of mental health issue. Yes. It really has been proven to be a very, very powerful way to get better.
That's true.
So if you have any challenges, and even if you don't, do exercise, because it's the cheapest and the best way to keep yourself in alignment and keep yourself fit.
I'll just
mentally
add
and physically.
Exactly. I'll just add that with this, it is very, very important to find an exercise or many that work for us, that give us joy doing them.
Yes.
That give us that sense of satisfaction. Because for many years, the trend was you have to do aerobics if you're not doing, and I hate aerobics. And I don't use the word hate a lot, but I sincerely hate aerobics. I just can't do this group setting within choreography. I don't. I found myself the first session of CrossFit. I'm like, oh my God, this is so challenging. I can't do any of it, but I love it. Yes. It's like, I'm going to try this more. Kickboxing was the same for me. For some people, it's yoga. For others, it's walking. Just even walking gives them joy, or running. Others, it's swimming. There are thousands of options of physical exercise, and we should not be pushed into a box of this is what everyone is doing and it's working for them, and feeling that it will work for us. A lot of times it won't, because we're just
it doesn't. That's very, very true. And it goes for any kind of thing here. That's why I don't like those lists of do X, Y, Z, because they can put a lot of guilt on people.
Yes, that's true.
And then you can ignore things that are really, really cool. Boxing, by the way, I'm a I love boxing and kickboxing, and it's my all-time favorite sport.
Yes, for me,
yes.
Like, oh my God, I can punch into something.
I was dragged into the boxing ring by a former colleague, and I'm greatly thankful for him. But he actually, like basically nagged me into it once, and then it was love at first from the first punch.
Yeah.
But the thing there was that it was something that enabled my body, and this is a really, really important point. For anybody who has mental health challenges, your body it holds memories.
Yes.
And it holds energy, and it holds, emotions. And when you get that flow going, you impact your brain and your nervous system, and you feel better. So for example, boxing for many women is a very helpful exercise because it allows you to be angry. And we are often conditioned not to show our anger or to stuff it. And anger is actually a healthy emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, martial arts or boxing or things that make that come out, healthy aggression come out, healthy protection actually, are very, very helpful and very healing. For somebody, like you said, it can be yoga that calms them down.
Yes.
Calms their nervous system. But really do explore different things, and don't think that everybody has to do yoga like 4:30 a.m.
No,
because that's not for everybody's body.
And the other thing is, it also depends on your environment and where you are physically. For some, hiking, I would have loved to explore hiking. I don't live in a country where hiking is an option, but for some it's hiking, for some it's rock climbing, or whatever it is. There are options out there, Tai Chi, and others that are all about your energy and about kind of channeling that.
Yeah.
There are options, and literally this is where we say, please go out of the box. Please think as creatively as you want. I found dancing as in something that really, really makes me happy. And I've said this a zillion times, and I don't have any Latin ancestry, but I love Latin music. It's a feel good vibe for me, and just moving with it. I'm not trained in any dance, but moving with it just makes me happy.
Yeah.
So definitely that. And then there are elements of, as I said, this versus going to therapy, understanding that even if you're doing this and there's still elements that are coming up for you and you still feel not well mentally, then go to therapy, because then you need to understand why is it that you're not feeling how you want to feel right now.
And these two support each other.
That's true.
I always encourage my clients to eat healthy and exercise and do all these things in addition, because it's not the one slice that will make you better. It's the more you can do holistically, the better.
So now the big question, coaching versus therapy. And I know that coaching has been on the rise. It's actually been around for tens of years, but it's been on the rise lately with a lot of boards and accreditations and certifications coming up as well. And again, there are certified and bodies that certify coaches, and they also have their protocols and they have their code of ethics and everything related to it. But what started first for me, coaching was about fitness coach or a nutrition coach. And then it started becoming a life coach and a health coach. I didn't know what health coaching is until I found someone who's a health coach. I'm like, that's interesting, And now we have financial coach, and we have all of different aspects, a whole spectrum of coaching versus therapy. Now, we've made the distinction before, and I think we need to reiterate on it again. Coaches are, they're not medical doctors, definitely. So it's not a psychiatrist. They are not mental health professionals in that sense, within that field of the profession that are known titles. They do not work with what happened. They could recognize what your limiting beliefs are now, what your blocks are, and support you through going forward, the present and the future. Yeah. But this versus mental health professionals.
Yeah, this is an interesting field. There are mental health professionals who are coaches as well.
Yes, that's true.
but by and large, those they have the approach is there are overlaps, but they are different. And in essence, coaching is more future oriented. It's more about solving an issue that you are conscious of.
Okay, I like.
You have a goal. You want to go to that, towards that goal. How do we get these are the steps?
Mm-hmm.
That's what coaching is in its simplicity. Whereas therapy is more about what has happened and what are the underlying causes, really the root causes of the way, why do you feel in a certain way, or why are you in a certain situation, and understanding that and healing that.
Okay.
And it's much more, I would say, much more subtle, because you can have goal-oriented therapy as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I typically work with rather goal-oriented people, and I like goal-oriented therapy. But at the same time, it is often a subtle thing where one thing leads to another. And the more awareness you gain, the more you go like, wow, this leads to that. And so it's not a linear, a straight path. Like, here are the steps, 5 steps to X. It's hard to do that with therapy, if not impossible.
Okay.
So as a therapist, you need to be aware of the unconscious motivations and also the way the psyche works.
Yes, I think that's important as well.
Where I really like coaching, and I think it's a great way to move forward if you have a clear goal. If you have a good coach. I mean, of course, coaching is not as regulated as mental health.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So with mental health, you actually have to have a degree. You are supervised. There are, bodies that make sure that you follow a certain code of ethics and so on and so forth. So in that sense, it's a little bit safer. Coaching, there are, like you said, coaching organizations that provide credits and really ask a lot from them, members. But then there's also another part of coaching, which is basically the Wild West. Anybody can become a coach.
Yes. Lately, that's I know, for example, within the Middle East, that has become an issue now, that a lot of people are calling themselves coaches without having the certifications or the accreditations, and people are becoming wary because, again, coaches are not supposed to tell you what to do. They're supposed to support you going through whatever you need to do. They're supposed to hold a safe space for you, non-judgment safe space for you. They're supposed to support you with the accountability of following through on your own goals, objectives, and actions. There are those that are coming out and telling people to do certain things that are not necessarily in their best benefit, but they kind of feel that they know better, and that is starting to tarnish a lot of the coaching industry from that perspective. Just that.
I do understand that. Yeah, I do understand that. Yeah.
So, okay, now.
But can I just add one thing here?
Of course.
I think for coaches, there's also a gray area and a little bit dangerous area. Is that when we go into these, when we talk about mindset, or when we talk about some of the underlying limiting beliefs and things like that, or even some of the exercises that coaches do, we work in a gray area because sometimes people can be triggered big time. And when I mean triggered, it's really old memories coming up, wounds, unhealed trauma coming up. Really, it can open up just from a word, from a sentence, from something. The triggers can be multiple, and they are.
Yes.
And coaches are not trained to contain that. Good coach does not venture into mental health field. Good coach knows
to refer to a mental health.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
When they have to refer someone to a mental health professional. There are coaches that don't believe that this is the case, that they can handle everything. And that normally comes from dealing with people who have not been traumatized, or they haven't yet been in a situation where somebody is clearly triggered. So I'm really encouraging, like, if any coaches out there are listening to this, just make sure that you know what your limits are, and when to refer somebody to a mental health professional, because it's safer for your client and for yourself.
Yeah.
And when to keep on going and pushing something.
I think when we were going through the health coaching certification, part of it was, I remember Joshua Rosenthal, who was the founder of the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, and as he was supporting us to coach others, and he was doing kind of the demo sessions, and he's like, yeah, notice that I'm not talking a lot. I am just kind of probing, and it is our role is to facilitate that the person with us, our client, our patient, they get to work through their own issues.
Right.
And they get to understand, they get to hear themselves talking about it and voicing them to understand where, again, because we have, we call it the circle of life. So there are 12 aspects to our life, and we're supposed to kind of support them into seeing them for what they are. And then they can recognize where the action needs. And then beyond that, if we can support them, as we said, like there are times that I work with someone and they expect me to like work with some form of trauma or a marriage relationship that's going bad. I'm like, you need to see someone specialized. So I can still support you doing this and that, but this is where you need to go speak to someone from that perspective. And I think sometimes for us, it's not sometimes, we always, as you said, have to be very wary and very aware of where that very gray line is. But sometimes that gray line is so evident, it's like kind of a fork. And sometimes it's, no, it's, you have to look really closely to where it is. So you, as you said, so you're not only, you're responsible not only for you, but also for the person with you, and
absolutely
ensure you're supporting them in the best way possible moving forth.
There's confidentiality as well when it comes to coaching. Counselors have a very strict training about confidentiality.
Yes.
I mean, not only counselors, mental health professionals.
Yes.
And it's a primary concern. I have seen coaches discuss their clients in public. I mean, okay. Facebook Messenger. Things about somebody that I would never, ever, ever discuss in public, or with somebody who's not my supervisor, my clinical supervisor. And that line is not clear in many coaching trainings. What are the ethical boundaries of your work? You do not talk about your clients. You do not identify them. You don't share their stories with other people. Period.
Yeah.
But this does happen. So when you look for help, make sure that whether you go to a counselor or mental health professional or a coach, like do your homework, do your research, and see, like try to get a feel for that, because you don't want to. You will be, if you end up in the hands of somebody who's unethical. In the case of coaching, unless they are part of a really reputable organization, there's nothing much you can do.
Yes, that's true.
In the case of mental health, you can actually complain to a buddy.
Yes, that's true.